Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all attendees, to join here. And this is a Think Like an Architect series, and we are into the third session where we will talk about data security and integration. So let's move on. I and thank you for support throughout this journey for previous sessions, and looking forward for the more engagement here from today's to upcoming sessions. So once again, thank you, and let me move forward. So this is all about me. This side Virendra. I am working as a technical architect at Vaha Innovations and serving as a leader of Salesforce Trailblazer Community Group Indore, Architect Group Indore. So these are my Trailblazer profile and social profile. You can keep me follow. I would love to connect with you. So today we have two speakers. I will not wait too much time to introduce themselves, but before that, let's recap whatever we have done. So for this series, we have six sessions. Session one and two we already delivered. If you have not uh, attended or not gone through those sessions, please follow our YouTube channel. There are playlists. Think Like an Architect, so you can go through both the sessions, session one and two. So let's begin with the session three, where we are going to talk about core architecture fundamental, uh, data security and integrations. So for the session today, okay, before jumping into the session, we have something which is going on. So I believe you all are contributing for that, and we have many trailblazers who are actively participating for this particular campaign, and we have very good response from that. So still you have not jumped into that, please go ahead and do more post and engage more with this series, Think Like an Architect. Please follow our hashtag, Think Like an Architect Indore. Okay, thank you. We have one more thing. In the last session, we were talk about the certification voucher distribution. So we have winner for that. So we have many submissions for the session and for the solution, but one of the great submission we have received, and which is reviewed by our previous speaker Zigar. So let's reveal the name here, who is Ruchir. So congratulations, Ruchir, for your effort and submit the solutions for the previous session 2. Thank you. Okay. So we are here to talk about core architect fundamental, which is data security and integration. So we have two speakers today, which are we those are well known person. They don't need require any introduction, but I personally meet all of both of them, and I'm still learning from them. They are contributing to in the Trailblazer community and inspiring more aspiring architects. So let's communicate and do more engagement to get more insights about whatever they are going to share today on those topics. So please stay tuned and keep focus on both the topics that we are going to discuss today, which are more uh, important in our architect journey. So let's begin with some basic introduction, whatever we have today. So today we have Himanshu with us, which is going to be on data and security, and Neha is going to be continue with the integration part. So as I said, we all know about Himanshu and Neha. So Himanshu is currently working as a director architecture at Salesforce. He's certified technical architect, and I have attended many sessions from Himanshu. So this is all about we have for today. Let's begin with the session one. But if you talk about Neha, Neha is also co-founder at Cloud Early, and she is MVP, certified instructor, also CTA. So the interesting thing about Neha, she is also contributing for this session today as a co-hosted. She is leading Trailblazer Community Group Dubai, and Trailblazer Community Group Dubai is also co-hosting the session today. Thank you, Neha and Himanshu. So let's begin with Himanshu. So over to you, Himanshu.
Thank you, Viren. Let me share my screen. Let me know once you can see it.
It's visible to me.
All right. So first of all, thank you everyone to be part of this session today. Thank you, Neha, to kind of co-host with me. I think we know each other for quite a long. We work together on our journeys as well. So there is always a mutual respect and a mutual learning from each other, which we've shared. So today my topic is something which is very close to my heart, which is security. And the way we're going to run it is security. According to me, is a vast topic, and it's very hard to do justice with it in a couple of hours time. But my intent today is not to make you security experts post this session, but just to sensitize you on various aspects of security which you need to be careful of when you are designing a solution. It goes beyond our standard security protocols and involves a lot more beyond the platform as well. And I'm sure when Neha talks about integration, she's going to cover some of the security aspects as part of the integration as well, because they come hand in hand. But I'll try to keep it uh, at a slightly higher level. Will not go into deep details because time would not permit us to touch on everything. But if you can take, if one thing you want to take back from this session is to understand how security is one of the key pillars for your architecture, and how it cannot be an afterthought. The biggest challenge which I have seen with Salesforce architectures is security has always been an afterthought. People look at functional requirements, they start building it, and they keep security for a later stage in their development cycle, and that is where the challenges happen. So without any further delay, let's get into security. So before we even talk about it, I wanted to bring your attention to some of these. I think you must have seen these things happening. You must have heard of data breaches happening in the Salesforce ecosystem, outside the Salesforce ecosystem. And whenever there is a security breach for an enterprise, the cost of that breach is unimaginable. You cannot compare it to the cost of implementation of a security or a security product compared to the kind of cost in terms of not only fines but the loss of customer trust is one of the key things for a brand from a security deterrent perspective whenever there is a breach of security. Now, when it comes to any complex enterprise grade application, there are multiple potential threats of security. And this is what, as an architect, we need to keep an eye on. It's not only about what we are building, but the most of the security breaches happen at an interaction layer, which means when I expose some functionality to somebody to consume through an API, through a third party hosted app or something else, that is where the most likely breach is going to happen. And some of the key reasons for security breaches is unauthorized apps. We use connected apps to create different things. We don't really go about looking into how that connected app is being configured. Are we putting in all the security protocols and measures? We just want to make it work. And as soon as it works for us, the connected app is doing what we want it to do functionally, we are happy with it. That's one of the key reasons why security breaches happen. And if you would have heard, heard about the data loader breach or the other breaches which have happened off late, one of the core reasons is a connected app which wasn't configured properly, because that's the gateway for any potential person to breach and get access to unauthorized data. Then there are inconsistent policies. So we create profiles, we set them up properly, but then we apply permission sets which are contradicting to what they need to have access to, and we end up opening more access without even realizing it. So that's again, the inconsistent policies across the organization becomes a very major aspect of why there are security breaches happening. Then obviously sophisticated attacks are there. People do attacks in terms of phishing and whatnot. They are going to be there, but we need to make sure that we are building robust enough applications to be able to handle it. Two, we're also educating the users around them. It cannot be just a system thing. It cannot be just the vendor problem. It is a joint problem which needs to be sorted at all possible ends. So when we as Salesforce talk about security, we always say it's a partnership, which means as Salesforce, as a product or a platform, there are aspects of security which we own, and all our customers who are using Salesforce for various purposes, there is a responsibility at their end to manage the security. Now, whatever customers are doing, obviously partners directly come into this landscape, because most of the times for whatever customers are implementing, there is a partner implementing it for them. But when it comes to an agreement of security, it is always between Salesforce and the customers. The partners are like the executors of it, which we do not directly deal with. So as a product, there are a lot of security measures. I'm going to touch base on them in the next set of slides. But we bring in a lot of things as standard security measures, which are always there in terms of data center security, encrypting data at rest, and whatnot. And then there are aspects of application development, uh, as I said, writing code, writing LWCs. Are you doing all the best practices there from a security perspective? That's the job of the customer. Any configuration or customization they're doing at their end, they need to make sure that they're following all the security completely. If any of these two pillars fail, then it would most likely end up in a breach for our customer. All right, so let's now get into the overall security architecture overview of how Salesforce security works. So for me, it's a 5-layer architecture which I'm going to talk about today. Some of these layers we are going to get a little detail into. Some of these I'm going to skip because we don't have enough time to really get into all 5. So first is the core layer of it, which is the physical security, the underlying physical security of a data center. Now, whenever, as you must be aware, Salesforce still owns a lot of data centers, and we are very aggressively moving to Hyperforce. So whether you look at an AWS data center or you look at our own data centers, from a physical security perspective, all the key compliances which are needed are there. You can go to trust.salesforce.com to see all the certifications which are mandatory for a data center to run customer centric data and any other requirement. So if any of your customers comes and asks you this question, that I have a doubt on the physical security of the data center, help me answer some of my questions from my infosec team. Because if you're, especially if you're going to a new customer who's not gone to cloud, who's never been on Salesforce earlier, they would have these questions for sure, who are primarily working on an on-premise environment till date. Their infosec team will have these questions. So your uh, answer to it should not be something which you cook up. Go to trust.salesforce.com and share all the relevant articles with the customer and let their infosec team handle it. If they have further questions, then engage with your partner engagement team from Salesforce and let them bring in the infosec experts of Salesforce to handle it. Do not address or answer questions for physical security of a data center on your own. You may end up giving some wrong information, which can be a deterrent for us as well as for you as a partner. So the next is the network security. Now, all are, so there are two types of network securities. The basic ones are anything and everything which floats uh, when the data is moving. We do it on HTTPS, TLS 1.3. We don't support HTTP as a protocol. These are all basic premises are already there. But at an advanced level, within the because especially if you are on Hyperforce, we have dedicated VLANs for our Hyperforce to a Mule instance, which is on again on Hyperforce, or a Heroku instance, which may be on one of the Hyperforce infrastructures or our own infrastructure. So when it comes to movement of data within our infrastructure, we've got dedicated lines so that one ensures that the data does not travel through custom hops or public hops. Two, it also takes care of speed and precision in terms of data quality and quantity. So That's where the network security comes into picture for us. Then comes the application security. This is where our partners need to be engaged, because this is what all of you end up doing. We can have best practices, we will set them up, we do give default out of the box policies as well, but it is up to the partner to configure, whether it is about authentication, authorization, anything to do with clickjacks, trusted trusting the third party JavaScript libraries in your LWC. This is all something which a partner, as part of their configurations and customizations, they do. And if you end up adding a particular third party library which has a potential malware in it, and you add it to the LWC and mark it as trusted, we as Salesforce would not be able to identify it, and that would lead to a lot of data issues for the customer. Then comes the data security layer. Again, from a data security perspective, there are a bunch of security protocols which we bring to the table. And there are a few security protocols which you, as a part of a configuration, you need to do. Guys, just give me a moment. I'm getting a call again and again. I need to take it.
Okay, no worries. So meanwhile, what I would recommend all of you, please, we have enabled QA. Please post your questions there. We will address at the end of the session. And chat is the way where we can communicate. If we need to speak something at the end of the session, we will enable your mic so we can talk. And we have questions coming. Yeah, we have two questions. One is from Jyotirmay and one is from Samir. Okay, so they are asking related to integration, I believe. Yep. So Neha will take care of those questions. So we are not going to provide any solution, but she will share the way how can we move forward. Yep. Himanshu is back.
All right, guys. Sorry for that. I had some delivery coming in, and the guy kept
No
calling me
worries.
again and
No
again.
worries. Please go ahead if you are okay.
Yeah. So let's go back to where we were. Yeah, we were talking about data security. So as I said, there are a bunch of protocols which we give out of the box, and then obviously there are things which we expect you to be implementing as part of the implementation. We'll do application security and data security in a little more detail. So that's why I'm just skimming them through. And then the final one is the monitoring and response. I think a very important aspect of security is not only about how we configure and customize it, but there is a lot of monitoring required around it. Again, from a data center monitoring, the SOC and all that, there are a bunch of things which we do. But monitoring is not only about monitoring data which is residing in the data center. It is also your application monitoring, which is very, very important. How do you identify a breach in the application? And then what do you do to take care of that breach is also very important. So there needs to be a process around how and what are the key events you need to monitor. Event monitoring is one of the key things which we recommend our customers to use for that. And then there are transaction security policies which you can configure. You can have reactive protocols built in your monitoring tools to address or handle something when there is a likely security breach. So this, let's move on. Let's now get into slightly more detail into the application or the platform security, right? So when we look at platform security from a Salesforce.com platform perspective, and that applies to other uh, offerings as well, Data Cloud and let's say Heroku or Marketing Cloud, any of our offerings which we have. Some of these platform security protocols are always going to be there for you. So as I mentioned earlier, let's start with the basic ones. HTTPS enforced by default. So any conversation we have, whether it is an API endpoint, whether you are trying to host or connect to a particular system which has a web UI, you want to do a canvas, anything and everything you want to do, we require by mandate to have an HTTPS protocol for it, which means we do not allow you to connect to an HTTP endpoint. Now, there are ways, and sometimes there are requirements you may need to do it. You can use a middleware to handle it, but from a platform security perspective, we will not allow any data exchange with an endpoint which is not HTTPS enforced. Then we've got clickjack protection. Now, clickjack protection is again a basic feature enabled for you. We recommend not to go and disable it, but I have, in my own personal experience, seen people going and disabling it for executing certain scripts. But that, and this is primarily done more on the public side of it, this leaves a big gap from a security perspective for you. So, again, very, very important, do not go and tinker with clickjack protection. Make sure that the libraries you are trying to consume, make sure that whatever you are trying to build, you are building it keeping with it within the clickjack protection enablement. Do not go and circumvent it. Then comes your X type content. Again, very, very important. People don't realize, they go and open up X type content headers. They do not follow the policies of X type content. And as a result, I, as a hacker, can easily place a malware in your web page because you've not got the X type content completely taken care of. So make sure that you are doing that. CSP is again very important whenever there is a cross uh, domain conversation to happen, any kind of data to exchange with a third party library being introduced, your CSP headers become very important. So every time you're doing a lightning out, make sure that you set up the CSP headers in the receiving domain properly instead of circumventing it. The problem is not with the policies. The policies are there, and when you try doing an implementation which requires you to handle them gracefully, we end up choking them and stopping them. We say we don't need it, let's open it up. And one, you may open it up for yourself, but if it is completely open, anybody can go and then put anything they want to in your pages. So make sure that whenever you are doing any kind of CSP cross origin, you add them to trusted sources, you download those sources, you've record them, either they are your own libraries or you have taken them from trusted third party sources. Only them allow them to be residing in your web pages. Then once you've done this basic platform thing, which primarily comes from the security controls, which are point and click for you, next is the platform code security. Now we do a lot of customization for every customer. I'm yet to come across an enterprise customer who's done at least 50 to 60% of customization in their implementation. And that's the way it goes. I think 70/30 or 80/20 is what I typically expect a customer to be on, from a customization to a configuration for a large scale enterprise implementation. Now, as part of our implementation, there are a few things which I have seen people are becoming more resonant with, and they are doing it more regularly. That's the SAST, the static code analysis. Generally, people are doing it. Peer code review, I see people doing it, but I've been on the other side of it for 20 years as a consultant before I joined Salesforce. And I know, as an SI and an implementation partner, most of the peer code reviews are done for the process rather than the performance, which means people do it for the sake of doing it to have a peer code review there. My request to you guys is, and I understand it is hard to review everything, do not go about reviewing things which can already be caught in SAST. Focus on things which a typical static code analysis tool cannot catch. And as part of your peer code reviews, security and performance should be the two key elements you look for. Don't look for functionality. Do not try to review it to see whether functionality will work or not. That's the biggest problem. We end up doing that, spending a lot of time and looking at things which will anyways be caught in a testing cycle. So your peer code review needs to focus on the right aspects of why you are doing it. Then SAST, I think, given that now Salesforce has also given a code analyzing tool out of the box, freely available to you. There are tools like PMD already available. Make sure they're part of your deployment cycle. Make sure that every individual, they are integrating it into their VS code, so that as soon as they write something, they get the review immediately done. So do not push it to the later part of the cycle. Again, a big problem I've seen in my own experience in various programs is we tend to push the SAST, the test coding towards the end of the cycle, and then we try just doing it in a way to circumvent the issue rather than fixing the issue. The Now let's talk about the areas which we don't do often but are very important. One is the entire dynamic application testing, right? Work with vendors. There are vendors available who help you do the dynamic application security testing. They help you do penetration testing, especially for your external world facing communities, your public sites. Make sure you're doing penetration testing. It is very, very important. If you are using Omni Studio uh, as part of the uh, Experience Cloud configuration, there are Omni scripts being exposed. Please make sure you're doing penetration testing. Omni Studio works on a principle of JSON data being shared between the UI and the backend, and that complete JSON I can easily view and change if I want to. The problem is not with the tool. The problem is we end up sharing data, posting data in that JSON which that user should not have access to. Or when we use that data in the backend controllers, we do not do adequate checks whether when I'm doing a query, does the user have access to that record, to those fields. These are kind of things you need to properly build so that even if somebody tampers the JSON, you have security protocols to manage it. All right. Then comes the API security. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'll leave it for Neha to talk about it. But at a high level, make sure your APIs are well authorized, controlled in access. The connected apps you are creating, make sure you use every aspect of it. All those things in the connected app are given for a reason for you to secure it. Do not just do a basic connected app which generates an token. Put in the IP restrictions, put in all other kinds of restrictions, profile restrictions. Use scopes very well. One area where I have seen people failing in their security for integration, they tend to use scope, full scope. Any integration, create a connected app, use the scope as full. That's the worst thing to do. Create connected apps for specific things. If you are doing mobile integrations, create connected apps for different personas, different profiles. Restrict the scope of data. Put the right set of integration users in there whom you are going to use. If you are using end user for an integration where I am using a mobile app and with my own credentials coming in, make sure you are restricting my access to the right set of elements. Make you need to We need to make sure that my connected app is the key barrier when it comes to any kind of breach. So use all those policies very well for you to be able to manage your API security. Then comes the session management. Again, this is something which I have seen people using very loosely. We tend to session timeouts, we tend to make it days. That's the worst thing we can do. It opens it up for so many attacks. People can steal session tokens and use it for anything and everything. Make sure we're not doing that. Make sure we're using good policies in terms of session fixation. It is a very good thing, but hardly people use it. This ties your session ID to an IP, which means even if I am able to steal that session ID, and I try using it from my machine, I can't use it because it will restrict me to have that I use that session ID from that IP where I had initially issued it from. So one is the IP I am allowed to log in from, which is typically a range. Make sure you're using it. But this session fixation of an IP is very, very important. It ensures that you're using it for the from the resource where you initially got it issued. Then concurrent sessions, if there is a need, try enabling them as well. Try doing additional activation flows if somebody moves to a new location. That again helps to ensure that if there is a breach or somebody steals my username password and tries logging in or gets it from dark web, there are ways for you to control it. So make sure that all these policies, and most of it are by default enabled in a new org. We tend to go and disable them to make life easier for our end users, but with that ease, we bring in a lot of risk as well. Let's go into the identity and access management. Now, before I go there, any questions for me, guys, on the couple of topics we've talked about? No. All right. Then let's go in. So let's talk about IAM, identity and access management, and what does it really mean. So if you really look at it, it looks at three things. Initially, it does authentication, which is who are you. Then it does authorization, which tells what can you access. And then once you have established who you are, what you can access, session management ensures that you are able to do it in a controlled environment and for a certain period of time. It's not that once you authorized yourself, it is for eternity. So these three things come hand in hand to help you create sessions for users which are well defined in terms of what they can do and how they can access it. I'll give you a classic example and going back to the connected apps, right? Connected apps is the authorization pillar of it. And I, as a user, may have access to 20 things. I may be able to do a lot of things. But when I come in from a mobile device, you may want to restrict on what I can do in the org compared to when I come in from the web view. Because in the web view, I am only coming in from a trusted device, whereas from a mobile device, it is my own personal device, and you don't trust that device enough. Now, this is where your connected apps come into picture with a properly defined scope of what can be done with the access token issued by that connected app. You will be able to restrict what all I can do. I may not be able to query data or download certain things from certain areas which I am not allowed to do. So if you're only allowing me to do an interaction with a web UI through the mobile app, restrict the scope accordingly for me to be able to do that. So make sure who you are. I may be the same person, but what I can do from different contexts is very, very important uh, aspect of it. This can even be done within the browsers as well. So if there is a high security session policies you can enable on certain transactions, which means when I try doing any of those, I have to go through another MFA before I am able to do it. So you're again putting security on high value transactions or high security transactions, which in a general session I should not be allowed to do. So all such things are available to us. It is important to ask these questions with the infosec team of the client to understand what's business critical, what security aspect is more critical, and then define your security protocols accordingly. All right, so let's talk about various ways you can configure your authentication and what's the architecture. The basic one, which we all have been using, is the password-based policy. There you can control the length, complexity, expiration. People I've seen set expiration to never for a lot of customers. It is one of the options you can do, especially if you're using MFA, but I do not recommend it unless you're using that user for a particular aspect where an expiration in password can have a deterrent impact. And again, I've also seen people doing it for integration users where they are doing integrations using username password flow. and then setting those integration users as never. It's completely wrong. It is wrong because in username password flows are not meant to be productionized. They are only supposed to be used for testing purpose. Use better OAuth protocols like a JOT or a web server flow or a client credential flow. There are so many options available which are much more robust rather than using a username password. And I can put my hand up and say even today 60 to 70% of integrations in production for clients are using username password flow for their integrations to work. And then their password, they've set it password as never expire. This is a classic case of something which can be stolen so easily. You've given your username, password, and the security token, stored it somewhere else in a third party system. Anybody who's got access, administrative access to that third party system will be able to steal it. You'll not even come to know about that. So that's one of the key things which we need to stay away from, right? Lockouts again very important, especially if there is a brute force attack who's trying to push a login with trying different combinations of password. Keep the lockout count to a smaller number. Let the users get frozen and then have a process to unfreeze them rather than enhancing this limit. And then security questions is also a good way. I recommend them to be used to make sure when it comes to retrieving passwords for users, especially if they've lost their password, it becomes much more secured and self-driven rather than you asking an admin to do it for them. So these are some of the things from a password. Limitations are obviously they're vulnerable to phishing. I can steal your password. I can do credential stuffing. People tend to reuse passwords, share passwords. They, and that's a common tendency. I will have a common password for all my official IDs, and that is likely if that gets breached, then that person can get access to everything. So try creeping unique passwords is again very important for as a user, and as a system I can't control it. It is a user habit. System won't know that you're using one common password for all everything or you're using specific passwords for specific applications, right? So the next option is a single sign-on option, which for an enterprise customer is a must-have. Push your customers to use single sign-on at least for their internal users, if not possible for the external users. I would recommend them to go in for external as well, but if it is not possible, at least for the internal users, let's do it. There are two flows available, the SP initiated flow and an IDP initiated flow. SP initiated flows are typically more secure. They give you more capability as well because you can do deep linking. IDP initiated flows are more convenient for users. So again, try pushing for an SP initiated flow, then an IDP initiated flow for your end customers. Try using JIT if you want to. It has nothing to do with security. It is more about the convenience of provisioning users. Do use certificates in your request and response payloads for the SSO assertions. I have seen people not encrypting the SAML assertions or SAML responses without a certificate. It's like a sitting duck. Anybody can catch hold of that SAML assertion and then reuse it to get new SAML tokens. Nobody will come to know that it has been stolen. Do not use only one-way certs, use two-way certs, which means both your SAML request and the SAML assertion should be signed. All right, then comes the MFA. Now you've done the authentication, I can log in, but MFA is like a second level of security from an authentication perspective. Now, since February 2022, we've already mandated it for all the internal users. So internal users today cannot log in without an MFA. I'll talk about various options available for it. We are also expanding it to API access. So if any API access is using a username password flow in some form and shape, we would require you to do an MFA on top of it. Then from an external user perspective, it's not mandatory, but I do recommend to use it, especially if your external users are doing some uh, transactions like payments, or they're looking at financial data, PI information, if they're dealing with some confidential information on the Experience Cloud, it's good to have an MFA in there. Now, in terms of various ways to do it, one of the strongest is the security keys. Now, security keys are typically YubiKey or keys issued by various organizations, which are a hard token key. You link that key to a particular user. It is a physical key, so it's with me. I need to put a token or a code from that key into the UI presented to me when I'm logging in. So it's hard for a phishing attack, because if you really look at it, unless I steal that key physically from you through various digital means, I cannot really take that key. Second is the Salesforce Authenticator. This is the one which we generally recommend. You can use it. It is again a well secured thing, because it's a separate application through which you can either approve a login directly, or you can use a 6-digit token to put in. Both options are available, especially if you are offline, then the TOTP codes are good. It allows you to have, it automatically uses your biometric unlock of the phone. So again, adds a security layer on who can access it. And it is completely encrypted with certs. So no, even if there is a malware in your phone, it cannot read your TOTP codes. It is completely secured from that. So that's one of the key ways we recommend people to use it. Similarly, there are Google authenticators and Microsoft authenticators as well. They only work as TOTPs. They only give you TOTPs. You can't really link them and approve logins. Another benefit of Salesforce Authenticator is that you can also put in, especially if you are trying to, whenever I move from one location to another, I can have trusted locations in there. So it won't ask for a OTP again if I'm moving from one trusted location to another trusted location. So it makes it easier for your user to manage it. And then the last one is the built-in authenticators of your laptops. Now it could be Windows Hello, Face ID, Touch ID of your MacBooks. Works well, but then it cannot be the only method, because that would not allow you to log in from any other device, or even from your mobile device. So if you want, or if you it is mobile, then it has to be registered. Every time you come in with a new device, every device will have to be registered. So it becomes a little cumbersome to manage. So it can be in one of the add-on things, along with one of the primary ways from the top three, which I have talked about. Then comes our authorization. So we've talked enough on the authentication, how people authenticate, what are the ways. Now let's talk about authorization, the aspect of the application or the platform which controls what you can do. So it starts obviously with your profiles. That's the bare bone architecture you would have, wherein you will, every user who's trying to access something will have a profile. Now, what profiles control today? They control a lot of things: object permissions, administrative permissions, general user permissions, field level security. A lot of these things are anyways planned to be moved to permission set. So our recommendation nowadays is to not create too many profiles. Create bare bone structure profiles. One could be for an employee, one could be for an API, one could be for external, and one could be for an admin. Create 3 4 profiles and leave it there. Just give bare minimum access controls, and control things which are not controllable through permission set. Things like uh, page layouts, things like record types, these things which are not controllable through permission sets, only configure such things here. And then from on top of this, you do permission sets. So permission sets will allow you to open it. Now, one challenge which I have seen with permission sets is people fail to understand how to create permission sets, and they tend to fall on extremes. So I have seen implementations. I go in there and there are 500, 600 permission sets. You ask them why, they say, you know what, for every individual level of permission, small thing, we've created permission sets for that, and then we are assigning it based on the user. It gives you granular control, yes, but do you really need it? Are you really going to have a user who is only doing contact read write? Most likely no, right? So when you are designing your permission sets, think on it from four perspectives. Either they can be functional permission sets. So you look at sales opportunity management is one permission set. Now whatever comes under opportunity management, you put that in that permission set. Similarly, case management, campaign management, revenue operations, or anything else. It could be different things for different clients, but these are functional permission sets. These come not from the persona, because as a individual, I may still be doing multiple functions, but these are driven by the modular functions of the application. So try creating a functional map of the application and then create functional permission sets accordingly. That's one way of doing it. And these four are not, you do one of these four options. You do all these four is how I want you to understand it. So you do functional and then you do feature permission sets. Now features are a little different. Somebody needs to have a mobile access. Somebody needs to have an API access. Somebody needs to have offline access. This has nothing to do with functionality. This is a feature, and this may overlay on a functionality. So I may be a case management user and I need mobile access and API access. So you enable a functional permission set and two feature permission sets for me, and you group them. Either you create, and we'll talk about the permission set groups as well, but let's not go in right now. These are the three things you'll assign to me as a user, and I will be able to do my whatever work I need to do. So keep your functional and feature permission sets separate. Then there are integration permission sets. Create those to be assigned to your integration users. Now the beauty is some of these integration permission sets may also be utilized for a user who's trying to access something from a mobile device or a third party app through which they are coming in as an integration user. So integration permission sets do not mean they're only there for an integration user. Some of those could be used by a end user as well. And then there are administrative permission sets. These again allow you to control administration activities at an administrative level. So it's not that system admin will have all these. As a sales manager, I may need report builder. So you will then give me a report builder administrative capability as a permission set. So that's how you can design your permission sets. It gives a more method to the madness of permission sets, for a lack of better word, and also allows you to have a better control on when you are assigning things and you are keeping things separate. So one is not overriding another one. That's also very, very important to understand. Then comes our permission set groups. So these allow you to kind of put your functional permission sets or feature permission sets together and create groups, which makes my management easy. So a new sales representative come in, I know he needs sales opportunity management, he needs mobile access, offline access, lightning user experience. So I create a permission set group for my sales representative, and it is tied to their persona. So permission set groups are tied to personas. I create my personas, and these will be created for general use, not for exceptional cases. Exceptional cases, you will go and assign permission sets directly. But for 80-90% of the users who can be tied to various personas, I'll create permission set groups at a persona level and then assign them an appropriate permission set group. Within the permission set group, we've also got this capability of muting permissions. Now, this is a very unique thing. You can actually apply permission sets to mute certain permissions. This can be done to help you stop a very specific thing out of a larger set of capabilities that permission set is giving me. I feel use it with a little bit of caution, because sometimes it becomes if you create too many muting permission sets, your maintenance of the app becomes very difficult. You don't know what's bringing what. It's so hard to figure that out. So although it's a good feature to have, but I would recommend it to use it only when you are doing it for a temporary purpose. So for there is something which has come in as a requirement to take away a certain access for certain users for a certain period of time, create a muting permission, apply it to them. Do not use it as part of your design. It will be hard for you to manage that design from a longer maintenance perspective. All right. So, putting all these things together, how the access control works, we work with the principle of least privilege. So, always design things with keeping this in mind that you give me access what I'm supposed to do. Do not expand access. And that not only applies to permission sets, rules, or sharing rules and stuff, it also applies going back to my connected apps and everything else. Do not give me anything from any security measure perspective which I don't need access to. Then create it modular. We've already talked about it. Modular design helps you keep it in check, and also if it is modular, well designed, you'll not end up accidentally giving accesses to people or revoking accesses from people which you don't want to do it. Then do a consistent naming convention. Come up with a convention what you feel is right. I've just given an example, but please maintain a consistent naming convention so that when I look at your permission set, I get a fair idea of what this permission set is all about. Do not give it test ABC. I've seen, and trust me, I've seen these names in production. People give funny names to permission sets. And then comes the documentation part of it. Make sure you document it well, create your config workbooks. All these things do not mean that you slack on the document side of it. Make sure you're doing a good job with your documentation, because that is the first thing as an architect I would look at if I am coming in reviewing anything. So make sure your documentation is up to date and represents what you have on the org. The delta in the documentation and the design is one of the key things I have seen people struggle with, especially as the development continues to evolve. Then our OWDs, I am not going to talk about these. I think you guys, all of you know about it. Make sure you use them judiciously. I've given some examples here. Have a look at it. But I think this is basic 101 of security in Salesforce. So I'll skip it. And then let's go to the, from a record level access perspective, how roles, and I've again, people talk these things interchangeably to my surprise, and that's something which I wanted to call out. Your whatever you do through roles versus whatever you do through profiles and permission sets is very different. If you want to remember it in one line, roles are record level access controllers. Anything to do with role sharing rules and all those, they control record level access, which primarily says which records you can access. Permission sets tell you what in those you can access. So which fields you can access, maybe an object completely taken away. So these things work together. So even if a permission set allows you to do access a particular object, which is private in nature, your roles or sharing mechanisms will then control what records you can see. All right, just a quick glimpse of role hierarchy. There are again different ways you can do it. One is ways the geographical hierarchy, or trying to map it to the enterprise hierarchy. The pitfall in this is sometimes we do not look at it from a Salesforce architectural perspective. One thing which I want you to remember, role hierarchy is not mimicking your organizational hierarchy. So try looking at the organizational hierarchy, that is your starting point. Look at various aspects of who is doing what kind of accesses they need, and then accordingly you define your role hierarchy. So your role hierarchy can be a subset of your organizational hierarchy, can be completely different from organizational hierarchy. I'll give you an example. System admin of a Salesforce org could be very low in the hierarchy in the organizational hierarchy, but he needs to be sitting right at the top in the role hierarchy because he or she needs access to everything. So make sure you think of how data access needs to move and create the hierarchy accordingly, and do not mimic the organizational hierarchy or the enterprise hierarchy. Then you can have functional hierarchy. Again, this is a better way of doing things because it typically moves away from organizational hierarchy and you look at functions and define the hierarchy. Third is a flat hierarchy for small teams where there's not a lot to be done. You can use this. So when you are designing your roles, keep in mind number of roles are restricted. Every time you build a complex hierarchy, it will have an impact on your sharing calculations, which means the performance of the application could be hit. So keep all these key things in mind when you're creating hierarchy. Do not create the hierarchy just for the sake of it. Then comes our sharing rules. I think you guys would be aware of either do a criteria or an ownership based sharing. They are numbered, so think of it in a well structured way. Try using Apex managed sharing wherever these two don't fit in. Do not use Apex as your primary mode of sharing. So there are a bunch of ways you can share data with a user, starting with the ownership to a sharing rule, to be part of a team, to be part of a public group. There's so many other ways. Implicit sharing is there. Try looking at all those aspects. If nothing works for you, then go to something like an Apex managed sharing. All right. So when to use role hierarchy, when to use sharing rules. Role hierarchy you use when you have a permanent stable management relationship. There is a consistent way in terms of how the organization is structured and the data access needs to be there. Some certain places it is too dynamic, it changes very often. Then my recommendation is to go with public groups and control sharing to public groups and keep moving people between public groups. If it is a very dynamic organization where my access requirements are going to change very often, it is hard to keep on changing role hierarchies for such use cases. Then use manual sharing if it is a one-off ad hoc thing. You just need to share something one of the times. Then go to manual sharing. Use Apex sharing when, as I said, if it is a very complex business logic which needs to drive sharing and none of the other options are available, then you go with Apex managed sharing. One caveat with Apex managed sharing is you need to define a sharing reason, which you can only do on custom objects, which means when you try doing an Apex sharing on a standard object, the sharing reason you use is manual sharing. And that has a side effect that if the owner of that record changes, the manual sharing is lost. So make sure you cater for it in your designs when you're doing Apex managed sharing for any of the standard objects. All right, before we move to data security, any questions, guys? Am I too clear or am I too boring? What's happening?
Oh, it's clear to everyone. We have some questions, but we will address at the end of your session.
Okay, fine. So then let's move to the next topic, which is our data security and encryption. So again, data security, we obviously talked a little in the previous session as well that it comes with two dimensions. One is the record level access and the other is the field level access. They come to work hand in hand, and that is how evaluation is done. And it looks at whether you have the object access, whether you have a field access, whether you have the record access, everything puts together, and then the final outcome comes out. Now, when you are writing your custom Apex, you need to make sure that you're using all the right keywords for Apex to honor these things. So if you want to do record level sharing, make sure you're doing a with sharing class. Otherwise, Apex would run in system mode. If you want to do an object permission or a field permission, make sure you're using the right clauses in your query, the SOCL which you are writing, so that either you can strip fields or you can throw errors. There are multiple options available, but we need to explicitly do it as a development team. We can't, if we don't do that and we write straight simple sockles, they're going to execute in a system mode, which means you will get everything irrespective of whether the field level security allows you to see that or not. Then let's talk the encryption. Now encryption becomes very important in today's age when data security is one of the key parameters of not only choosing a particular vendor from a transformation perspective, but also for the client, for their own brand image, as well as ensuring that they are adhering to all the rules and regulations of the industry. Encryption becomes the kind of a baseline requirement for everyone. So platform started with classic encryption. You could create encrypted fields. They that means it was a new custom field you would introduce. It would store data in there, and it has always been there. It would have a maximum size of 175 characters, right? And there were a lot of limitations with it. Now, to overcome this came our Shield platform encryption. And by the way, there is a new thing which has also come up called database encryption, which is even better than Shield encryption. I did not bring it in here because it is still in beta and yet to be talked about in terms of we're not actively going and talking about it, but it is going to overcome some of the limitations which Shield has. Now, how does Shield perform, right? So the Shield is an additional layer of encryption done on top of the encrypted data in our data centers. Now, what does that mean? By regulation, anything which is stored in our data center, or whether it is Hyperforce data center, has to be encrypted. So whether you have Shield or not, whether you have encryption or classic encryption or not, everything which is getting stored in the data center is already encrypted. So even if a customer doesn't use Shield encryption, if they ask you, is my data encrypted at rest? The answer is yes. Now, the challenge or where the customer feels they need more control is that encryption key is owned by Salesforce. It's a multi-tenant environment. So multiple customers are storing data in the same tenant. And although we generate separate keys for each one of them, but we store those keys. As a customer, you have no control on how that key can be utilized. And a lot of customers came back and said, as part of their regulatory need, they need to own the key themselves. And that is why Shield encryption came in. So we said, okay, here is a new feature we've given it. You can uh, encrypt both custom and standard fields. So go and define which fields you want to encrypt based on your industry. Use your key, which you can generate on the platform, or bring an external key as well. And that way, that encryption stays completely in your control. So it's a dual encryption happening. First, those fields are encrypted by Shield encryption, and when they are stored on the data center, it is encrypted by Salesforce again. So when we retrieve it, it's a dual decrypt activity which needs to be done. It gives better control to the customer, and it also means there is also another angle to it, is that, let's say, if a regulatory authority comes to Salesforce directly because there is an ongoing investigation on a customer, and they say we want access to the customer data, as Salesforce we will have to extend that access to them if they have the right, as in if they have the court order and whatnot. And because it is only encrypted by our key, if you are not using Shield encryption, that means we will decrypt and give it to them. They'll have full access to that data. But if you've done field and Shield encryption on top of it, so even when I decrypt and give it to them, it is still encrypted with your own key. So it is not usable for them unless they come to you and ask you to decrypt it with your key as well. So that's dual encryption, also controls and gives much more control to the end customer. So that's also very important for a lot of enterprise grade customers, that they have control on what's being encrypted and how it is being encrypted, right? Now, with this, if you look at the old encryption, the standard one, you could not use it in where clauses, nothing was supported. This allows you to do where clauses with deterministic only, but still allows you to do it. And there are certain things which it still does not support in terms of multi-select pick list, formula fields. Formula fields, we know it cannot support because it never stores a value. It's just a reference to the formula which is stored there and calculated at runtime. So that's how it works. Now let's talk about the key management. So as I said, you can, the default is Salesforce managed keys, wherein you come in to the org, generate a key. Key stays within your org and your control, but it is a Salesforce managed key, which means the key generation activity is done by Salesforce, and Salesforce uses its key store and the KMS service to generate that key. The customer control is low because Salesforce has access to the keys. So although you're doing Shield and everything, but Salesforce does have access to the key. The second is bring your own key, which is where you can bring your own key. So you bring your own key and upload it to the environment, and then you use that key. It allows customer to control the key rotation and destruction, but it is because it is still uploaded on the Salesforce environment. Salesforce still has access to that key. Then comes the third one, which is the cache only key service. This, the key is generated somewhere else, the key is stored somewhere else, and it is only used as a reference at runtime to encrypt and decrypt data. So it is not stored in Salesforce. Salesforce does not have uh, any access to that key. So in the real uh, word of bring your own key, this is what a real bring your own key is. Because the other two, it's a shared key. You have access and I also have access. So it's no longer your key only. But this is the one which ensures that you only have access to the key, and Salesforce has no control over the life cycle of the key or the key itself. All right. So two types of encryptions we can do: deterministic and probabilistic. Deterministic encryption means that every time you do the encryption, it's going to generate the same value, and so there's a consistent ciphertext, which is as in the consistent encryption which it uses, which means behind the scenes it uses a consistent key to generate your ciphertext. So the key does not change every time. This will mean that there is a deterministic behavior to your encryption, and hence I can use them in clauses like where, exact match, in clause, not in clause, start with clause. These clauses I can use. Where I cannot use them is something like a like or comparison operator. There I cannot use it. It is case sensitive, and no case insensitivity for searches, which means the case has to match exactly. The case insensitive search does not work for encrypted fields. Now, probabilistic encryption is it generates a random key and generates a random value. So every time you encrypt, it's going to generate a different ciphertext. Now, because it is generating a different ciphertext every time, I cannot use it in where clauses, because in the where clause, I don't go about decrypting the value and then matching it with my where clause. It's the other way around. I encrypt my where clause value and then try matching with the encrypted value stored in the DB to get the data, which means that in case of a probabilistic, because every time I encrypt, I'm generating different values, there is no way this where clause would work for you. So deterministic is good for your email, SSN, phone, typical PII information, where you know you need a where clause for sure because you would be using it to get to a particular customer. Use probabilistic only for high sensitivity fields, fields like medical diagnosis, notes, which you are never going to use in a where clause. So use it there. But again, look at the sensitivity of data. Don't just think from, okay, I don't need it in where clause, let me do probabilistic encryption. Think from how this data is required and do the encryption accordingly. All right. So some examples of when Shield is mandatory: whenever you need to do HIPAA, PCI, GDPR, FedRAMP, any of such compliances come into conversation. Shield is a basic requirement you must go and put in. Then if there are PII information, but they're not talking about compliance, you can recommend Shield for sure. And for me, mandatory and recommended, both the scenarios, you should push for Shield. Do not shy away from telling your customers Shield is something which you should need. Classic encryption you can use if it is low sensitivity PII, titles, job titles, phone numbers, stuff which is not uh, high sensitivity PII. You may think of using classic encryption if you want to create custom fields. It still comes with all its other baggages. So make sure you uh, don't put it in a standard field. You are okay to create a custom field out of it. You are okay to have 175 characters. So all those limits, if they are okay, you can use classic and still use classic encryption. So do not keep it out of your kitty. Do keep on considering it. And please do not do encryption on where it is not needed. I have seen implementations where people have gone in and used encryption for non-sensitive data just because it is available to them. It's a performance overhead to do encryption decryption. It's an org overhead. So only do it where it is needed. All right. From an implementation perspective, and encrypt selectively. I already talked about it. Do not encrypt everything. Test your search and reports. Plan for key rotation. How is this key rotation going to happen? If it is Salesforce managed key, how are you going to rotate keys? What do test the impact of a key rotation to make sure that nothing is breaking once you rotated the key. Consider of cost is also very important. Now, Shield is very differently priced. It is 20% of the overall deal size. So it has doesn't have its own uh, cost, but it comes like a 20% cost of the overall deal. So sometimes if it is a big deal, this 20% can be a big number. So make do consider it when you are proposing Shield. Then do think of these hidden costs which are associated with it. So there is a direct cost, obviously, which we as Salesforce are going to charge, but there are a lot of hidden costs as well, like development time for testing, performance impact on infrastructure, potential need for additional API capacity, your training for your admins and developers, and audit and compliance documentation. These are all hidden costs which we don't think of when we are thinking encryption, and they end up impacting either in the schedule or the cost of the project. So make sure you are thinking about all these when you are bringing in encryption into the project thing. Now comes the ROI justification. I think it is very important, but I think I started with it, that it is not about the cost of the tool, which is going to give you a ROI in terms of revenue enhancement or uh, loss of as in retaining customers, but it is the loss of brand image and the regulatory fines, which are so big if that happens, that this small cost seems like pennies in front of it. So make sure you're able to talk about it, and that is where my first slide will help a lot. You can use those examples; those are all publicly listed examples. You can actually, when you're talking security to the customer, talk about those examples. Talk about the kind of cost that company had to bear because they were not completely secure. So don't worry about a few millions here and there on the security. Look at the larger picture of billions of dollars of loss, along with loss in customer trust, which is not quantifiable but impacts a business big time. All right, let's go to the last part of the session today, which is the security tools and monitoring. So we've talked about so many things. Now let's get into what are the tools and monitoring capabilities Salesforce brings to you. Right. So from a security tool ecosystem, there are obviously detection and prevention tools, tools like security health check, data classification, transaction security policies, security center. These are all available apart from transaction security policies, which is part of this shield, the security health check, security center. These are available to every customer, and they should be using it to evaluate the health and from a security perspective for their own org. Then we've got monitoring and auditing tools. So we've got event monitoring, audit trail, field history tracking, field audit trail, all these, and login forensics. Complete login history is maintained, right? Make sure you're using these uh, properly, creating dashboards on top of it, writing appropriate events, as in consuming an appropriate event and having an automated action. So any login which is happening from an IP which maybe you've never seen earlier in the history, or user using a new device, all these can uh, be enabled to send prompts to an admin to go and have a quick check with the user. Are you the one, or something like that? Although there are ways in the login, anyways, through MFA and all, you can have more things added on it so that an admin has a better view of what's happening. Then the compliance and review tools. So App Exchange Security Review. So all our third-party apps, they go through that. Salesforce Shield Suite is there, which again you can use. Data mask in Sandbox is a feature we recommend people to use. So you should be recommending and using these. Data masking, if you don't want to use our feature, do make sure that you have a data mask strategy. It could be your own custom tool or a third party tool, that's okay. I'm not here to push that you must use Salesforce, but do have a data masking for Sandbox, especially in your partial copy and full copy sandboxes. And I have seen people even loading data into lower sandboxes as well from their production without any data mask. So data mask should not be an afterthought. You should plan for it as part of your refresh strategy and data seeding strategy of sandboxes. Then comes your governance and assessment. So optimizer is there, lightning usage app is there, reports and dashboards are there. You can create a lot of things on top of it, again, to control the security. Now, some of these tools are proactive in nature, some of these are reactive in nature, and you should be using both to have a good secured environment. And as I said, security should not be an afterthought that something wrong has happened, then we are thinking. When you're designing your application, bring these things, because these are some of these are NFRs which people don't even think of. You go to a client and say NFR, they'll only think performance, and they'll give you NFRs on the performance perspective. But these NFRs from a security perspective, if anything, are more important than the performance NFRs for me, because these, if they go wrong, it's going to have a huge impact on the business. All right. So what's the security health check? It is one of the tools available on your org, allows you to do a quick check. You can go to the setup, do a security health check. It will run and look at it from various perspectives, or identity and access, what's the sharing, what's the administrative setting. So these five things which you see on the right are what it evaluates and then gives you a score. It gives you an overall score, and it also highlights that these are immediate attention required, these are nice to have. So it creates a good report for you to look at and action on it. All the things which it highlights in red needs to be actioned immediately. You should have this security health check as one of the criterias for go live. Like you have UAT completely done, performance completely tested, scale test done, whatnot. Security health check needs to be one of the go live criteria, that yes, we've done it and we've met all the criteria. That is when you should allow somebody to go into production. Otherwise, do not go into production if this is not in green. Then said, run your monthly scans, plan target score between 80, more than 80 for a good health of the thing, including change management. So run before and after change, every change. So I've already kind of touched based on all of these. These are important for you to use the tool appropriately, and don't put it as an afterthought in your uh, overall implementation plan. Okay, oh sorry. Then comes your event monitoring. It is primarily an activity logging, and then also has an analytics license in it. So even if you don't have CRMA, if you have event monitoring, it comes with an analytics license baked into it to allow you to create dashboards on top of event monitoring data. This is primarily a reactive tool in nature, but it's very important for you to monitor and identify any potential security threats or performance issues. You can actually do both using the event monitoring. It logs, I think, around 80 or 90 odd events. I don't have the right number in my mind, but it logs a lot of events. You can actually create good dashboards on those events. People push event monitoring data into tools like Splunk to create a complete automated process on how to manage the content which is coming out of event monitoring. Okay, it does the event log files, does the threat detection, has transaction security policies. So transaction security policy is a proactive thing. You can configure policies on certain events. They run in real time. So if you blocked a particular type of transaction, it's going to block it there and then. It will not allow it to go through. And then we have real-time event monitoring. So through platform events, there is a real-time event monitoring also enabled. It is not enabled for all the events which are logged in event log files, but a subset of those allow you to have real-time event monitoring. Here again, it is an event which happens post the event is happened. So it's not something like a transaction security policy that you can block the event, but you can respond to the event in a much faster way rather than an event log file, because the event log file gets populated after 24 hours. So that's a long delay. So events which we feel are critical and we need an immediate response on needs to be managed in the real-time event monitoring. And then the analytics studio, which is the CRMA, allows you to read data from event log files, and create various dashboards for your administrators. Then another very good tool very few people know about is the Einstein Data Detect. Now, one of the key things around data classification is how do I classify data? What kind of data do I have? I don't even know that in an legacy org. So you use Einstein Data Detect. It analyzes all the existing data from a pattern, contextual, machine learning classification perspective, as well as semantic understanding, and then comes with a proposed classification of fields for you, looking at the current data you have in the space. So it only does classification. It is not doing any security measure on top of it. It does the classification for you, and then you can take actions from a security perspective. But it allows you a seamless and an easier way of classifying data in your Salesforce, or especially for the legacy ones where there may be a lot of data to look at and deciding what kind of fields they are. So it identifies PII, HIPAA, government and legal data, PCI data, as well as financial data. These are the five categories. It sends, puts the data in, and then it creates a report for you. Whatever needs to be done on that classification is up to you to consume. It's not going to do any process or anything on top of it. All right, from a best practice perspective, start with high confidence finding. So whenever it finds like a typical AI tool, it has a confidence score next to it. So initially you focus on the high confidence ones, take actions on it, and then go to the other ones. You need to involve your business stakeholders because they need to ratify what the findings that yes, they are correct. You can define your own custom patterns as well. So if there is a particular thing which in an industry for which we don't have patterns as part of the data detect, you can define your own patterns. You can automate policy enforcement. If there is a automation you need to do on it, so you can configure it on top of it. It's not going to have anything out of the box to do it. You can do continuous monitoring. So you may run it once and then you can tell it to run every 3 months or 6 months to continue to identify any new potential PII fields which may have come in because of a new deployment. And then make sure that you document everything in terms of the findings and your actions and agreements with the business. So with this, I would now hand it over to Neha. Uh, do you want to take questions now, or shall we wait for Neha to
Yeah.
complete her session?
So first of all, thank you, Himanshu, for addressing the session on data and security, and that is very informative. And meanwhile, thank you, Neha, for addressing all the questions over the Q&A. So over to you.
Do you want to answer some questions that are in the Q&A, Himanshu, first?
We have couple of questions. So okay, let's cover. We have Lokesh. He was also asking something. So Lokesh, do you want to speak or do you want to speak later? Okay, let's continue, Neha. We will cover at the end. Okay. And
Okay.
meanwhile, if you need required some interaction with attendees, so let me enable all of them so you can speak. Or do you want to continue with sharing first?
Q&A is fine. I think I'll be looking at the answers in the chat, and that's fine. I may
Okay,
ask some questions, and then and
okay,
whenever required, I'll ask you to unmute. That's okay.
sure.
I just need sharing access for sharing my screen.
You must have. So let me change the mode.
Maybe because Himanshu is sharing, I can't see. Yeah, now I can
Stop.
see. Thank you.
Different
Sure.
behave in different ways.
Yeah, I will just. All right. So thank you so much, Himanshu, for such a detailed and informative session. I guess it's very hard to fill the shoes of a person who just left the stage. The expectations are too high by now. But what I'll try to do is, with the remaining time, try to clear up some architectural concepts behind integration and how you should come up with an integration solution that's well architected. Also, just by introduction, this is Neha Nagori, co-founder at Clouderly, a Dubai-based Salesforce partner. I'm also a certified instructor with Salesforce. I teach the integration architect class, Salesforce MVP and CTA as well. Well, when it comes to integration, I've heard a lot of people, especially stakeholders, executive leadership, project manager, at some point of say it's definitely becoming a nightmare. Just a second, I'm seeing someone is not able to hear me. Is everyone able to hear me fine, or is it just Surinder in the chat?
I can hear you properly. And Himanshu, can you please confirm?
Yeah, then I guess maybe Surinder, you need to drop or join in again. Maybe there's an issue. Okay, I'll continue still. Maybe he can catch back on the recording.
Sure.
It's a nightmare. It's a very common problem here. You know what? Even though we planned integration from a very long time, things are not working fine. Some mappings are missing. The data is not synced properly. There's a delay. There was a latency problem. There's a resilience, performance, etc. How what could have gone wrong? How could I have fixed it as a Salesforce integration architect? From the Salesforce side of things, things may look right, maybe not. The tools that you might have chosen, like REST API, for instance, may have not worked beyond 2000 records because you were not aware about the volumes. What could you have done at the time of design would have fixed these problems? For example, timelines. As an impact of the bad design, your timelines may push the date of your go live, which is very important because if you're pushing the date of the go live, you're somehow losing trust from your executive leadership. They might have to put in some more budget, and once you lose the trust in delivering something, it becomes very hard to get more time on. Data integrity, you may get duplicate data, wrong data, incomplete data may lead to some hiccups in running the business. Directly impacting something that relates to running a business is also a risk. You may run out of budget and the trust that I said from your customers, your business, your stakeholders. These are all the things that could go wrong and impact yourself and the organization if integration has gone wrong. Now, the first step that you should take in order to make things right is determine what does your business do. The first step as an architect when you're entering any project or any organization, to fill those shoes, you should understand what your business is doing. Are they selling products? Are they selling services? Understand their entire business model, because as an architect, you're not just technically good, you're also good at understanding their business. Your functional understanding matters a lot. You as an architect are a bridge between a lot of people, your stakeholders, your functional business owners, product owners, BAs, even developers, solution architects. All of these people are talking to you. You are proactively determining a lot of things inside the project. You should be able to perceive information in such a way that the person you're talking to should understand what you're talking about. You should not always be technical in your script, but also functional to understand how your business is going to get executed after a design that you have put together for the implementation. Understand the business presence as well, whether your business is present locally, regionally, or globally. And I cannot stress it in a better way than how Himanshu had told you about the regional compliance that comes within. You have to understand that as well. The industry, the regulations that comes with the industry, whether you're working in banking, insurance, healthcare, or telecom. And how big is your business, whether it's small, medium, or enterprise, because we also want to talk about volumes when it comes to our design. If we don't consider volumes, then we are doomed. Imagine Amazon, the developer who might have written the first interface of placing an order for Amazon back in the day. If he might have not thought about the big billion day sale or the Black Friday sale, they would have not developed the interface that is scalable, still working today, and you're able to place the order within minutes. Right. So imagine what kind of business you're working with and how scalable they are going to become in next 3 years or 5 years. Consider those volumes today while designing the first step of your implementation. So while you start designing, the three layers that you should approach while designing an integration solutions, right? Each layer divides the application architecture concepts into logical categories. The first one is the user interface layer, the place wherein your communication channels from the end user come together. For example, mobile phones, website, physical stores, wherever your users are interacting with you is your user interface layer. The second one is your business process layer, wherein your logical interface is written, your business processes are written, your logical decisions are made. And the data layer, wherein you're syncing the database of different systems together so that you can have an engaging systems developed for your end users at the user interface layer. Once you determine the layers, make a note of volumes because, of course, you're working with a system that is SaaS based system. Salesforce has ample of governor limits that you should be sure about. You also determine the timing of the integration. So, whenever a business requirement is given to you and you're designing an integration solution for it, you have to determine whether this is a synchronous solution or asynchronous solution, meaning whether your solution should be working real time. A system A is calling out to system B should respond immediately, or can it wait for a while? And also, the direction of integration is very important over here, whether it's inbound or outbound. Now, when I say inbound or outbound, especially in terms of when discussing about Salesforce architecture, you should always reference Salesforce as your referral. When Salesforce is making initiation, or when Salesforce is the source and calling it out to an external system, it is always an outbound integration. Always take Salesforce as a reference over here. And as a reverse, when an external system is making an initiation, or when is it a source and Salesforce is a target, it's an inbound integration. And based on the direction, we have different tools that you can use in terms of solutioning your Salesforce architecture. And therefore, every solution, every integration problem will fall in one of these 6 boxes, and we call them as integration patterns. Now, these integration patterns are nothing but 6 ways of solving an integration problems. These are guiding principles on how you contextualize and business requirement and solve an integration problem. So let me first explain you how these integration patterns are put together, the meaning behind them, and what layer, timing, and direction they work on. And then we are going to go through a very special article written by Salesforce Architect team onto understanding these integration patterns one by one, and the art of storytelling in integration architecture. So let's start with remote process invocation, request, and reply. Now, what does that mean? If you cut these into different pieces, it says remote process invocation, request, and reply. What does this part mean? Meaning Salesforce is trying to invoke a remote process. It's definitely an outbound call because I'm trying to invoke a process outside of Salesforce. Salesforce is me. I am trying to invoke something. And then when I invoke something, I'm making a request as a user. I try to send a request and expect an immediate response after some process is being run. This is working at the business layer, and the timing is synchronous. I need a real time response from the external system. The direction is outbound because we are initiating the request from Salesforce. On the contrary, we have remote process invocation, fire and forget. Same things happening. We're invoking a business process from an external system, but this time we are not waiting for a response. We are not waiting for a reply. We are just forgetting about it. You fire something and information out as a notification that something has happened in Salesforce. You should consume that information, but I don't want any response. This kind of integration is always at the business layer, but then the timing is asynchronous because not waiting for any reply, and the direction is outbound. The third type of integration pattern is data virtualization. Now, when you hear the terminology virtual, what comes to your mind? Something that is not real is virtual, correct? Same thing is there in Salesforce. When you are looking at some information on your Salesforce screen, suppose you go to account record and then you click on the order related list and you see a bunch of orders. What if I tell you in the related list, the orders that you're seeing are not stored inside the Salesforce database, meaning they are not stored inside either a standard object or a custom object. They are coming real time from another external database and being displayed inside Salesforce. And that kind of pattern is called as data virtualization. We are at the data layer because we are dealing with data itself. We're not changing any business process. And this kind of integration is always synchronous because it is always letting you see the fresh data from external system. Now, since the request is always being started from Salesforce, it is a outbound kind of integration. Another kind of pattern is remote calling. Now, if you cut these two in the halves, remote plus calling, meaning a remote system is calling in into Salesforce. That definitely tells me that an external system is trying to invoke some Salesforce APIs. It could be standard REST APIs, SOAP APIs, it could be your composite APIs as well, or Apex web services that you've written for running the business. It could be at business layer or data layer, depending on the kind of implementation you're doing, right? If you're calling an Apex web service, it is a business layer. But if you're invoking a standard REST API for S object, trying to update or insert an account record, it could be data layer. It depends. Timing also depends whether you are wanting the external system to get a response from Salesforce immediately. It can be synchronous or it can be asynchronous based on the services that you're calling from Salesforce. But eventually, the direction is always inbound because the initial request has been initiated by the external system to Salesforce. The third one is, the fifth one is batch data synchronization. What does batch data synchronization mean? Meaning you're chunking your data into different batches, smaller batches, and syncing your data between the system. Now, the synchronization happens at the data layer because we are syncing the two databases. And it's always asynchronous. Why is it asynchronous? Because usually you're synchronizing databases that has large volumes of data, and you have to chunk them out in batches. When the batches will run, they may run serially or parallelly, meaning they will not give you an immediate response of how the data is being synced between the system. You may also want to set up frequency of synchronization, such as by running the batch jobs in Salesforce weekly, bi-weekly, monthly to sync the data from Salesforce to the outside system. In that case, the direction of the integration will be an outbound integration. But then there could be scenarios wherein you might want to migrate the data inside Salesforce. You're going live for the first time from legacy CRM to new CRM system, which is Salesforce. At that point of time, you're doing an initial data migration with large volume of customer data, order data, or any CRM related data. At that point of time, you'll be using bulk API to sync the data from the legacy CRM or migrate the data. At that point of time, it's asynchronous, but at the same time, it's large volume as well, and an inbound kind of integration. And therefore, the direction can be both ways when you're syncing the data between different systems and Salesforce. It depends what kind of scenario you are in and what kind of tool you are using. The tools that you could use to sync the data, as I mentioned, are batch jobs, the bulk API, and the third and most important tool you should remember for syncing Salesforce data to downstream systems is change data capture, wherein you can throw events every time there is a change in a field in every record of the objects that are enabled for change data capture. Or you can, in short, call them as CDC. The final one is UI updates based on the data changes. Now, this is very important to know because you are syncing your user interface based on the data changes without even refreshing it. Back in 2005, if you're watching a match of cricket and you don't have access to TV, but you have access to a browser with internet, you go to a web page of a sports website, type in live cricket score, and then it would give you live cricket score. But then what happens after 2 minutes and you want to see how many runs were scored? You had to refresh the page and then look at the scores. And likewise, you have to keep refreshing your browser page in order to look at the scores. Now, fast forward to 2015, 2025 is when you are with your mobile screens, typing in live cricket score, and you get the live score just on your mobile or your browser from the sports website or Google directly. When a new score is being scored, you don't have to refresh a page, the score automatically comes to your screen. Now, how is that happening? You've evolved with streaming API. Now, what is happening? Somewhere, someone is updating the score database. The score table, the record of score is getting updated. The moment the record gets updated, a screen or your mobile UI or a browser page is being subscribed to that database table's updates. The moment the database gets updated, it passes an event. This event is being published onto an event bus. That event bus, we are subscribed from our mobile screen. So the moment that event bus gets an event or an event message, our screen gets updated as well with a score, improvising the user interface, telling them that, hey, you don't need to refresh your screen, you can just get the event directly. And that's where this particular pattern comes in. UI updates based on data changes. And we can implement that in Salesforce via push topics. Push topics, platform events, or change data capture. You can subscribe to those, and in your Lightning Web Components, you can get the data in near real time. I've written this as synchronous, but this is near real time way of approaching the data set. And this is always an outbound integration. Now let's have a look at integration tools in Salesforce. Like I kept mentioning different tools inside Salesforce. Let's go through them one by one. Let's go through the event-driven architecture tools. First one is push topic. As I mentioned, what are push topics? Push topics are the ones wherein you can create an event bus in Salesforce via SOQL query. So if you determine a SOQL query like select ID, name from account, and create a push topic with that SOQL query, what will happen is that whenever a name change occurs inside account, you will get a push topic inside your bus. So when that happens, and if you're subscribed to that push topic, the name will automatically update as it got updated in the database. Now, what kind of pattern is that? Can I get the answers in the chat? What pattern is this? When you are already subscribed to an event bus and you're getting the updates on the user interface. PubSub is a terminology or a tool. It's not an integration pattern. Remember, we had 6 integration patterns over here. Out of these 6, which one is push topics? Wherein I am on a UI, a user interface like LWC, and whenever there is a database update happening, I get the update without refreshing the screen. Think hard. All the answers so far I've got are not correct. Yes, I've got the correct one. It's UI update based on data changes. Why? Because you're updating your user interface based on data changes in the background. You're subscribed to the data changes of the account SOQL query that you've just put. Now, I've got answers like PubSub and platform events in the chat. These are not the patterns that we spoke about. There are only 6 patterns. Now, what are patterns? As I mentioned, patterns are the 6 boxes in which your scenario will fall into, and you will be able to devise a tool as part of your solution. Okay, so I'm not asking about tools, I'm asking about a pattern in this scenario. Now, the next tool that I have in the list is platform events. What is platform events? Platform events are the kind of streaming API based tools that Salesforce has come up with. They are offering scalability and flexibility in such a way that you can go as an admin and create a platform event just like a custom object, so that any event message that you're throwing in the bus will create the same body as how you created the platform event structure for. So for example, you want to create a location specific field and you want to throw a location as an event message, you create a custom field and it will throw out. So whenever you want to notify with your own JSON body flexibly, you create the custom fields inside a platform event. So this is that flexible in order to notify the final system. So when you throw a platform event, it throws inside a bus, and whoever is subscribed to that bus gets the notification of the message that you want to throw. Platform events are so flexible that you can throw the events from an Apex class, you can throw the events from a flow, a button, or any place of your choice. Subscription wise, you can subscribe it from your Lightning Web Component. You can subscribe it from an external system that is enabled by a Comet D library using a bio protocol. You can always subscribe it using a platform event trigger as well. Now I'm going to give you a scenario of platform event and you tell me what pattern it falls under. The scenario is that I have an order record that gets saved inside Salesforce and I want to update that order status field into another system. So I want to just notify of the order status using a platform event. So I've created a platform event. In that platform event, I have two fields, order ID and order status. And I pass them and notify them into my platform event notification. So what kind of pattern does it fall into? Correct. This is fire and forget because I'm throwing an event and I'm forgetting about it. I'm just throwing the order ID and I'm just throwing the order status. Perfect. We've got it right. Now the next one is change data capture. Now change data capture is also an event-driven tool, but then it works differently. It's not flexible how platform event is. Platform event, you could throw it from your triggers, your Apex class, you could throw it from and also invoke it from REST API. It's just so flexible that from Salesforce, from external system, you could perform the platform event notification. With change data capture, when you enable it on a singular object, and whenever there is a create, update, delete, undelete, or any sort of DML operation happening on that particular object record, and change event is thrown. That means that whenever there is a change, we need to inform the downstream system about it. So that makes change data capture a data synchronization tool, a blind data synchronization tool that cannot let us flexibly choose any fields or any records of our choice. It will just blindly throw the events telling the downstream system that you have to sync this information in your database. The primary use case that I'll give you is that Salesforce is the customer master, and now this customer information has to be synced every time there is a change into a downstream data warehouse. So when you have Salesforce as a customer master and as a downstream system, you want to sync the data of customer, you will use change data capture. Now, what scenario or what pattern does this particular tool is falling into? When you're synchronizing the data. Batch data synchronization, that's correct. So change data capture, when you're using that as a specific tool for synchronizing the data, it will be batch data synchronization. Now the second scenario would be when you want to inform the other system of the changes, such as MuleSoft, and forget about it. It will also fall under fire and forget. So there are two patterns change data capture can fall into: fire and forget and batch data synchronization. Always remember that. Now, there is no hard and fast rule. There are two ways. A tool can form under multiple patterns. A scenario can have two multiple patterns as well, which we are going to see in the next use case that I'm going to show you. So there can be two patterns possible for a single tool as well. And a single scenario can have two patterns too. Then the next one is outbound message. Outbound message is an out-of-the-box tool. It's slightly outdated now. We don't use it as often, but it's still there. It used to be as an action for workflows. Now it can be used as an action for flows as well. So whenever you want to notify another system in an asynchronous way, by firing a message in an XML format or a notification in an XML format to an external SOAP listener, you'll use outbound message. It's an out-of-the-box tool, but you just send notification blindly without expecting any response from the external system. You use outbound message. So what kind of pattern would that be? It's fire and forget, correct? Next one is call out, REST and SOAP. Now in this case, you can write a REST code inside your Apex, like create an HTTP request and get an HTTP response. What kind of pattern would it fall into? It's request and reply. This is not remote calling because you're making an outbound call. Okay. You're making an outbound call as call out. The next one is external services. Same thing as call outs, but slightly different because you're not writing any piece of code. It's all out of the box. The only caveat here is that the other system, the external system, should conform to Open API specs. They will give you a specification for the API which you have to upload inside Salesforce. The entity for uploading is called as external services. You create a name credential for authenticating against the external URL. You create an external services so that whenever you create that external service, it will create callable actions for you based on the definition of the API. And that's the reason we need to have an open API spec as a mandatory requirement for creating an external services. The moment you save the external services, the actions will be shown inside a screen flow or a flow that you're trying to make a call out from and get a immediate response from the service. So when you're using a screen flow, in that screen flow, you're calling an external service action and getting an immediate reply. What kind of pattern would it fall into? Request and reply. Perfect. Then you have REST and SOAP, standard and custom. When I talk about standard and custom SOAPs or REST, let's start with the first one. What is a standard REST? When you have a standard endpoint URL that can be called upon from an external system, such as S-object URLs, wherein you can use to create a S-object record. When you make a post call with the body of your name value pairs of account, for example, and you hit the account data S-object URL, you can create an account record in Salesforce. Same goes with SOAP API. The second kind of REST API endpoint could be your non-S-object ones, like you're running a query or you are trying to get limits from limits API, correct? The third one could be your composite API. Composite API, what does it do? It doesn't let you use just one single REST API, but multiple REST API as sub request. Your sub request will run one after the another so that you will not consume API limits. So if you had to call 5 different REST APIs, you will consume 5 different API limits, correct? But now if you use composite API, put 5 sub requests in one, you will be able to call Salesforce's standard REST API in one request without invoking 5 API limits, with just be one API limit called against. But remember, there are certain limits around composite APIs that you should know before implementing them. And there are different ways of implementing composite API. There's a normal composite API, there's composite graph, and there's composite batch as well. Now, the next and final kind of REST API that you can invoke or SOAP API is custom one, wherein you write an Apex web service, you annotate that Apex web service as a REST resource or a SOAP resource, and then put a URL to it. A URL mapping will be used to call that Apex class. So the moment you call that URL from an external system, it will run that Apex class for you. So anytime you want to run a business process logic, you will call that particular REST resource or the REST Apex class. So calling or talking about all these scenarios, what is eventually happening? An external system is calling in Salesforce, be it at data layer or business process layer. So what kind of pattern did we just talk about when we spoke about REST and SOAP? Remote calling, perfect. Now the next kind of tool that Salesforce gives us is Salesforce Connect. Salesforce Connect is used to display the information in real time without storing it inside Salesforce using external objects. We have read about standard objects. We have read about custom objects. There is a third kind of object called as external objects. It has a suffix of __x. It gets created when you connect Salesforce to an external data source, which is enabled with OData endpoint. OData endpoint is yet another protocol that the other system or database has to comply with, so that Salesforce Connect can talk to that system and get data in real time and display it in Salesforce. It will appear as if your orders, your order details, or any object you want to get from that external database look like they are part of your Salesforce system. The user will not be able to determine any difference because it will have your page layout, your SOQL queries will run, your social queries will run, you can build custom apps on it. Everything is possible with those external objects. The only caveat is that you cannot run any automation tools from those external objects. Though you can read and write on those external objects and make changes into your external database, but then you cannot run any automation rules. You cannot have any validation rules as well on top of that. All right. Now, that kind of tool, when you're using, you're virtualizing the data from external system without storing it. So what kind of integration pattern does it fall into? Data virtualization. Perfect. Now, the next kind of tool is Heroku Connect. Now, I'm a little bit skeptical talking about it now, since Himanshu, you're from Salesforce, maybe you can chime in. There's this recent announcement of Heroku end of sale for enterprise customers, but still current customers will be able to use Heroku as is what I understand. Now, when you have Heroku as a platform and you're having Heroku's Postgres database used for running your custom applications or custom web portals, if you want to sync that Postgres database with your Salesforce database, you can use Heroku Connect as a tool. It is a bi-directional sync between Heroku Postgres database and Salesforce database. On demand, you can create Salesforce database directly by creating out-of-the-box mappings inside Heroku and their database and do a sync. So in that case, what kind of pattern does it fall into? Batch data sync. Perfect. So these are some common integration tools inside Salesforce. Now, I just want to share a few resources over here that I've opened up. The first one is a data integration guide. So very, very, very useful guide. And the second one is the patterns overview with Salesforce. The patterns overview is nothing. It's a very simple guide wherein you go through these patterns. They will tell you definition of each of the patterns that we went through. I'm sure this session was very helpful to get you a head start, but then you can read about the definitions and the patterns in detail. Now, the pattern reading is slightly different, and it's in a way meaningful for every architect. Why? Because they have set out reading a pattern with a simple context: problem, forces, solution. Every particular pattern will follow this template. Let me go through this one more time. Yeah, here there's a pattern template. Now, what is a pattern template? I'll explain you and give you a little bit of head start. When you are showcasing a solution in front of a room full of people inside a meeting, how do you showcase a solution? You have to tell a story. Imagine you're watching a movie and that movie is also telling a story, correct? The director has directed that movie really beautifully. How? The movie starts, they set out a context. They introduce the main character of the movie, the actor, the actress. They have a name, they have a location that they live in, and that's how you get to understand and put more interest in watching that movie, because the director is beautifully showcasing the context. If you don't see the context in the movie and they just start with some fighting sequence or something, maybe you lose interest because you don't know what's going on, right? So then after setting up the context, slowly the director will show you a problem and some forces behind those problems, like what kind of forces, constraints, or some circumstances that could evolve with that problem. After the problem is showed to you, the movie progresses in, and then you sort of see in the climax the characters that you were introduced before are solving that problem in the best possible manner. That's the art of storytelling, right? The same thing you need to do when you're trying to explain your integration solution. You first start with a context, the overall integration scenario, your business problem. You always start with explaining what your CRM does. You can't start with saying in a meeting where you don't know the different skill sets of people that I have a CRM Salesforce, but you don't go and explaining what does your CRM does. It captures leads, it generates opportunities, it masters the accounts, and same thing with the other systems as well. Always start with the context, then explain your problem, the forces behind it, the solution. The solution can be more than one solution. You can solve a solution or a problem with REST API, SOAP API, both. But then you have to also tell that out of 5 different solutions that I have, the first one is best fit for my organization or the business scenario over here, and justify why. Without any justification, I guess you'll not fly as a successful architect. You always have to justify your solution and draw a sketch diagram. A UML sequence diagram is always recommended in order to support your solution. Even if your storytelling skills will fail somewhere down the line, but your drawing or the sketch that you're presenting will tell something to perceive an information in such a way the other person understand. And then share your results in sidebars and so on. So likewise, in the same template of storytelling, your whole integration patterns are explained. Remote process invocation, yes, it's explained with the context. They explain Salesforce, they explain the other system, then they share different solutions, the best fit solution and the good solution. They've arranged it, whether it's a fit or suboptimal fit. Just read this with a lot of patience, and maybe you will need it to read it just one time, and then you're good to go in solutioning your integration solutions. The second one I want to share is this guide, the decision making guide, and I really like it because the way they have arranged the decision making guide for providing an integration based solution. So they start with outbound integration first. With outbound integration, they share some tools. When you want to do an outbound integration, what kind of tools are possible? And even as a subcategorization, they have arranged these tools as low code tools, hybrid tools, and pro code tools. Now, you always start with an out of box solution. If out of the box solution is not enough, you go with hybrid approach. Hybrid is not enough, or it is not sufficing your business requirement, then you go with pro code. And that's how your decision making skills should be. And that's how they've arranged this article, and it's beautiful. Even if you don't understand what these low code tools are, like what is change data capture, I don't understand. What is external service, I don't understand when and how to use it. So they have a sample solution guide for you as well, wherein you can see that, hey, this is a similar real life example. If you can read it and understand, this is the similar kind of situation in your organization, take an inspiration from over here and implement that in your org. And not just that, here they will tell you whether this particular tool requires a license, what kind of timing it supports, volume, deliverability wise, what does it support, whether it has debugging inbuilt or not, built-in error handling, can we use it with the encryption, does it support shield or not, the one that was mentioned by Himanshu, and the authentication protocols that are supported. So this will give you the entire metadata for your decision guide if you want to make one. So always go through this guide before making any decision. You'll maybe have to go through it once, twice, thrice, and maybe for fourth time you'll be a pro, and then you may not need to look at it again and again. All right. With that, we move on to the next part of the slides. Use cases. So I have a use case over here, and I need you to solve this and showcase a solution in the chat with me. Your integration solution requires that Salesforce includes order information, but you use an external system to manage your orders. Your integration goal is to connect your Salesforce external system to Salesforce to manage your orders in real time. Basically, you have a sales rep who is wanting to see orders inside Salesforce, but they are not managed inside Salesforce. So what kind of solution are you going to propose here? Can you write that in the chat? Change data capture. Look at it one more time. All right, I've got some answers. Let's look at it. Use the framework and ask yourself some questions. What layer is it? Volume, not specified. We know it's business layer because my sales reps wants to see the orders managed in the different system. Timings in real time I want to see, and it is asynchronous. Direction can be either outbound or inbound, right? Because I want to send the data and receive the data as well. So in my case, in my Salesforce instance, if I want to look at the orders, real-time orders from the external system, I can either use a flow and make an order request from external system, get instant reply, and then look at the managed orders inside Salesforce. And that makes it request and reply. Why? Because I want to initiate my user interface or user interaction from Salesforce. My Salesforce becomes the source and external system becomes the target. And since I want to look at the instant information, it's request and reply. Now, it did not say whether I wanted to store the information in Salesforce or not. So your assumption about data virtualization is right. But if I want to store them in real time, then we use request and reply. Okay, there's not going to be any platform event or change data capture because we are not going to sync the data over here or notify the system. Always draw the diagrams in order to perceive your solutions. The second use case, there's a telecom company wants to use Salesforce as a front end for creating accounts using lead to opportunity process. An order is created in Salesforce when opportunity is closed and won. So the moment my opportunity is closed, I create an order, but then the backend ERP system is the data master. The order must be saved to Salesforce opportunity record and the opportunity status changed to indicate the order was created. So there's a lot of back and forth going on over here. How do you solve this integration problem wherein there is multiple things happening? And that really relates to your real life, right? Batch data synchronization, but our front end is there and we are trying to invoke a process from the front end. So the moment your opportunity is closed, you're trying to do something, you're trying to take an action. I'm not asking about patterns here, I'm asking about a solution. You have to tell me a solution this time. When I say a business use case, the first thing you do it, understand the functional behavior. Where is my user interface starting? What is it invoking that makes me go to an external system? Understand the direction, the business layer, data layer, process layer. What am I trying to invoke? And then whether there are two integrations involved and can I do it with one integration? How is it possible? Think about the functional way first, then try to map these functionalities into technical requirements. And once you have the technical requirements, you convert them into your integration design.
Please feel free to speak something if you wish.
So, in the
That
interest of time, actually, I know we are running over. So, I'll just start with the framework that we have. What is the layer? The business layer. The volume is small because we are here dealing with one data at a time. The moment my opportunity is closed, then only I'm creating an order. So particularly, it's just a single order maybe, right? Timing is asynchronous because the other system is managing the orders. We are not managing, we're just creating the order. So we have to deal with both the directions over here. How does it work? And I think Dilip has tried to figure it out quite well. Salesforce, that is now introduced a complexity of introducing a middleware as well, because that's how our enterprise systems are there. And I've assumed there is an ERP who's managing the orders. I'll write a record triggered flow on opportunity first, which will throw a platform event, which you are slightly right in understanding, which this ESB will or my MuleSoft will receive, right, with the opportunity and account details and create an order in ERP. Once this order is created, I will receive these order details in MuleSoft and create this order inside Salesforce and associate it to the related opportunity. Correct? Now, in this case, this particular thread was fire and forget, as mentioned in the chat, but the other thread wherein my asynchronous order is coming in and relating to the opportunity, it's remote call-in. So like I mentioned before, a single tool can be part of multiple patterns and a single scenario can have multiple patterns within it. And this is a classic example for that. Okay. And we are going to use the standard REST web service to create an order over here. Now we have gone through a lot of technical details. Technically, we know how many tools are there, how many patterns are there, how we have changed our thought process to ask ourselves questions at what layer the integration belongs to, what direction, what volumes. We've considered everything. And now we need to start thinking about planning this integration, because many a times what happens is, as Salesforce architects I've seen, especially the solution architect level, they'll be like, hey, you know what? I have to give them a go live date based on my estimates. So you know what? Everything is out of the box. I just have to enable CDC. It's just 8 out of works. And I think we can go live in 2 weeks. Done. But this is not it. You're an integration architect. When you're talking about integration, you need to plan the entire go live with not just your application team, which is Salesforce team, but also with the other teams that you're dealing with. Maybe you're passing on change data capture to the other system, who are retrieving the events, reading the events, and then they are formatting the data. They're formatting the data like how you can store it in the data warehouse. Maybe they're also checking for duplicacy. Maybe they're also checking for gap events and overflow events that are passed from change data capture. They're doing the error handling at their side. It may not be a 2 weeks work for them, right? And on top of that, you have to do UAT test as well, stress test as well. So when you do the planning, you have to be really proactive in explaining that, hey, you know what, from Salesforce side, things will be really eased off. But then when we do the testing, error handling, this is how our mechanism should be. You're working with the periphery or parameter of Salesforce at this point of time. So first thing you should do is create high level system landscapes, which will explain how the systems work together. And at low level, per integration, you have to draw one sketch diagram explaining the parameters of each integration. What are you going to pass as a request? What are you going to get as a response? Should be clearly identified at this point of time. Define the number of interfaces in the design phase and circulate it with the appropriate teams so they can understand what you're planning and also design things at their end. Postman should be your best friend the entire time, because Postman has a very good collection of these interfaces that you can mock your requests, responses, even your platform events. Now it has also enabled with PubSub API. It is also sort of now enabling the MCP APIs, agent to agent APIs, MuleSoft APIs. Everything is there in that collection. Should be your best friend in order to curate those requests and share it with your other teams. Work very closely with project managers and scrum masters. Proactively work on defining the dependencies. And I'll tell you one thing, there's nobody else coming in the project or the release of business or functional requirement coming and telling you to do things. You as a technical architect, you are the only one who are telling others this is how you should do it, this is how long it should take, and this is how well you should execute it. Nobody is coming for your rescue. This is you. You're put in that spot for the very same reason, to tell people how things should get executed. POs, they will not know these things at all when it comes to integration. You are the one who are going to maybe write down the stories for integration. Forget about the BA. BA will just know that these systems should be in sync. But you are the one who is writing the entire user story for them. Keep in mind the attritions and budgets. Budgets come and go. People also sometimes come and go. So you have to keep up with the documentation, with the skills in your team. If you're going on with PubSub API and nobody knows about the Python server, then you're doomed, right? In the weekly integration updates, take every detail from the tech leads where they're at. Create your own cadence, create your own frequency of meetings. Do not rely on scrum masters at that time. They will only work on some standard guiding principles given by SAFe. They will not know what kind of pain you may go through. So proactively circulate those meetings between tech leads and get the information of where they're at. And make sure you're not replicating any AI. If there's any reusable AI that you can make use with, just use them, especially when you're using a middleware. In middleware, especially such as MuleSoft, you have experience layer APIs, process layer APIs, and data APIs. I'm not going to go in detail and explain them to you because that is very MuleSoft specific. But when you're going with API-led connectivity with tools like that, try not to replicate any API and see if you can do with any API that is already there inside your ecosystem. With that, we can go towards the questions and end this session. Are there any open questions? I'm not keeping up with questions actually.
Thank you, Neha. I can see we have questions from Pratik. He's asking about more Heroku. So let me share those questions again. So if you
Yeah,
can
sure. There's some questions from the Leap as well, but I'll go with what you're posting.
share.
There's a question for MuleSoft. We have been reluctant to use event-based integration, which is cost intensive. Have got any other approaches? Now, this is the thing. So, as an architect, like I told you, you should have technical skills, you should have communication skills, and you should have business skills as well. When I say business skills, you should really understand what pain point your business is going through in terms of functionalities, but also in terms of budgets. If MuleSoft is something you find very expensive, then there are other alternatives in the market as well. Like Boomi is there, Azure is there. If you're already using Azure and you have a Microsoft based systems, try to use Azure as your middleware and implement event driven architecture via that. And try to make your business see the long term ROI with these solutions. Maybe MuleSoft may seem like a solution that is very expensive to begin with, but then the MuleSoft teams talk to your AEs, they will bring in solution architects, give them their business use cases, they have internal tools that they can run, and tell you that, hey, you know what, today it's taking 100k dollars, but then in next 5 years it's saving you 500k dollars as well. They have those tools to tell you that. So make your business look into long term ROI with help of these tools, which Salesforce team can definitely help you with. Okay. Then there's another question. What is a core implementation solution Heroku is providing, and what kind of solution can be implemented in Heroku? Please explain this with any simple use case. So basically, Heroku is a platform as a service. It's a PaaS. Just like how you have AWS, Heroku does the same thing. Heroku is providing you a platform so that you don't have to go and buy your own servers and build your entire technical landscape. And those on demand tools like creating your own database, hosting your own server, your deployment tools, everything, reporting, dashboarding is there on demand. So you don't have to create your SaaS applications from scratch. Just like AWS, Heroku is also another solution. And it gives you your choice for independence to choose your own uh, coding tool. Like you can use Python, you can use PHP, any coding language of your choice. It's agnostic of that. I hope that answers your question, Pratik. If not, then we should talk about Heroku in more detail if you want to know. Okay. Any more questions? These are the two questions that I see. There is one more question from Dilip. He says, we wanted to implement Heroku for having a common web mobile interface, moving away from community. Also, as there is no out of the box mobile app, mobile publisher is too costly with upfront cost for SMB accounts, but have to drop that idea because upon recent announcement, does Salesforce has some other plans? I see no option but move towards hybrid approach for moving data between AWS Azure. Even though I want to keep data in SF ecosystem, it's just become difficult at times. Now, this is a question that maybe Himanshu can answer as he's coming from Salesforce. What is the roadmap for people who are wanting to go to Heroku? And maybe if you don't have the answer, that's fine because things are really clear, not clear at the moment.
So, see, from a Heroku perspective, we are as unclear as you guys are. It was a shock for everyone that we suddenly decided it to be a end of sale for us. Now, from a PWA app perspective, there are, you can obviously host it on other places like Azure, AWS, and whatnot. But that comes with a PWA architecture overhead of how you would sync data. That stays with Heroku as well because everything is not syncable directly through your. And if you've done a PWA app, you'll realize that the Heroku Connect with its all benefits of syncing data doesn't work when a PWA app is sitting and you need logic to be running in Salesforce. So it's a hybrid architecture which requires an integration pattern and a middleware to be in there. That's how I think we would recommend, or at least I would recommend to go for now. Look at putting your as in the PW app somewhere, do an API-led integration with a middleware in between, which does the heavy lifting. Mule can help you have those inbuilt connectors available to sync data between your PWA DB as well as Salesforce, both from a real time as well as more of a batch sync perspective. So that's what I can think of right now. What's the future going to look like? Are we going to have something else which will replace Heroku in our offering? I don't have that answer right now. We don't have that clarity.
Thank you, Himanshu. This just Dilip, I just have one follow-up question. So my another concern that has been that Salesforce provides such a good, you can say, user management, user role security access management system. The idea with Heroku was that you could leverage that also, right? And if I move to any other external system, I have to literally rebuild that solution. How the users would be, how the roles would be, how the permissions will be, how it will be enforced. So, I mean, we have been around for a while, right? Salesforce have been around a while, and the competitors also, and now we have been come to an age where it is. But we still do not see any support for open system languages inbuilt into the platform. Salesforce as a platform do use open system technologies in their labs related publishers that they have in App Exchange, right? But why can't they open it up for us?
That's a question way above my pay grade, guys. It's a question for Srini probably
Sorry.
to answer, but just to help you understand, right? We are looking at how we can see, you got to understand the underlying platform infrastructure and how it is being used. Force.com has always been a proprietary uh, framework for us, and it had its own languages. For us to enable open system languages on Force.com may not be the right way to go. We are looking at, and if you look at how data cloud is being envisioned for us, we are way open to how we were traditionally. We were very closed, like an Apple kind of a thing. Everything of Salesforce would work well, but external things would not be there. We have understood that the way landscapes are changing, it would require us to have more flexibility. Data Cloud does have a BYOC, which is in beta right now, which is bring your own code, where you can write stuff in Python and other languages in future. Today it's Python, but we have a plan to support other languages as well, which will allow you to do it, but within the context of Data Cloud. Can you run applications built on a Node.js through Data Cloud and all that could evolve into it? I don't know. We don't have that roadmap for now. Today, we are talking about bringing in primarily your custom models and custom scripts or heavy lifting of, as in what people used to use Heroku for is a lot of heavy data processing as well, wherein you do not want another infrastructure. We are trying to now answer that through the BYOC thing. And we are also exploring it as an organization as we speak. We have our own products which were running on Heroku, especially the parts built specifically for India, like our DMS solution, that all the dealer management and the trade promotion which we had in consumer goods runs on Heroku. Now that's a question for us as also a sales team. What do I go and pitch to the client if I can't sell Heroku? How do I sell that, right? So we are looking at options. Once we have better answers, we will probably share it and market it. But for now, BYOC is looking like an option for us, especially from a trade promotion use case perspective. But for other things, we still need to figure out. Our
Um,
PW app is not in something which I can tell you in at least for the next 6 to 9 months. I don't see any pipeline around PWA.
Thank you so much, Mansha, for that. Just one additional question. This relates with MuleSoft as well. So,
Uh,
just one, sorry,
yes.
just one last question. So, we have to switch to Python-based scripting instead of MuleSoft. I mean, I asked this question, Neha answered it as well, because of the cost associated with it. Again, when you start using event-based integration, again, it's a very good idea, but it does bring up a cost. And we have been thinking about it, and we are trying to figure out the way around it in terms of budgeting. But Python is coming up, and I think it will be eventually used for integration and data part.
Yeah,
So
it
that's
would. As in, there is no doubt about it. People are using it, and that is why we are opening our ecosystem. Especially looking at, it's not only the cost thing; it's the capability of the underlying language as well. Python being one of the leading languages when it comes to building your own custom models. And if we want to have an open offering where we want people to bring in their models, it cannot be just standard Google models or Azure models. It should be, especially the small organizations who are building their own custom, very specific models to them. through BYOC, they can bring all those to the data cloud as well. So that's something which we've taken as a step forward. Other things will evolve. Your individual license management on an Heroku PWA can still be done using an SDK. So that should be an option for you where you include SDK to handle that particular scenario. But barring that, I don't think Heroku anyways brought any IAM capabilities to the picture.
Thank you, Manshu. Thank you so much.
Okay, Lokesh, are you available to speak something, or I can go ahead with your question on behalf of? Okay, fine. Let me go ahead. So, Himanshu, what Lokesh was asking, if we got the requirement to audit the security for a particular customer or org, and the restriction we will have to finish within a week. So, what will be your first approach to handle it, and what will be your last approach to handle it, and the way of completing it? Is it
See,
going to be complete or
security audit, first of all, cannot be done in a week's time. So
okay?
you've got a week's time, clearly communicate that it's going to be at a very high level.
Mhm.
Use standard tools, as I said, right? Security health check of Salesforce that generates the report within a matter of few minutes or hours, depending upon how complicated your org is. But those are the basic ones which you can run and analyze. But security is not only about what you have within the force.com platform. It's the holistic enterprise architecture which also needs to be reviewed. How you've done your uh, let's say if there are on-premise systems and you've got a gateway which is opening up, how's your firewall configured? An enterprise grade security assessment is a much wider activity. For platform, if you've got basic tools in place, you can easily present a report in
Mhm.
1 week's time, run static code analysis, run all, as in you can just do tool based things and find out if there is something glaring. But security is also about monitoring things while you are using it at a larger time period and then identifying areas where it can go wrong for you. That may not happen in a week's time, but it will at least give you a kickstart in terms of where you are with all your basic configurations. And if you've done something drastically wrong, then you will be able to figure that out.
Got it. So it's totally based upon the platform and the structure of the org we have.
Yeah, it's going to depend on a lot of things. If you are a multi-org, that brings in other challenges. What all integration points you've opened, what kind of integrations are there involved in it. So every aspect adds to the overhead of security. But you can't do everything in a small amount of time. But tools will give you something out of the box which will be a head starter for you.
Got it. Thank you, Himanshi. So Neha, I think we are done with the Q&A. I'm not able to see any pending questions right now. Okay, then we are good to wrap it up. And once again, thank you. But before closing, I have something to say. Please, I'm just sharing one note. Next Saturday, we have upcoming event for the Salesforce Developer Group. Aswin is also here. So I'm sharing RSVP. If you are around Indore next Saturday, please do RSVP for the event and join us. So I'm sharing the detail here. Please do RSVP. And second, um, most of the attendees are asking about the recording. So I'm sharing the YouTube playlist where you can find the recording. We will update by today EOD or by tomorrow. And please follow our LinkedIn page to stay updated with the slide for this deck. Okay, so that's all we had for today. And once again, thank you, Himanshu and Neha, for the very informative session. And people are, we have very huge response over the chat. We can see. So we will plan something next time for the remaining things because integration and the security and data. It's all about we cannot finish in a day. So yeah,
That's the
thank
core of anything, right? You can spend days talking about security, it won't get over.
exactly. Yep. So we'll plan something next time. And thank you for the session three, both of you.
Thank you very much
Bye.
for
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Please,
Bye.
bye. Bye.